Hey, happy Sunday. It's Mother's Day, and we celebrate all our mothers and are so thankful. And that starting next Sunday, we're going to be getting back to our live services. It's going to start out with Sunday school at 10 a.m., worship at 11 a.m. For 2 weeks. And then on the 31st of May, 9 o'clock worship will resume. But next Sunday, the 17th, we want to celebrate gathering back together again. We're going to have lunch after church. It's going to be a great day of celebration. If you're able to, we encourage you come and be with us that morning. We're going to have a great service with lots of special things planned. So come on and be a blessing. Let's pray together. Lord, we love you. Thank you so much for your goodness and your mercy to us. Lord, help us as we look into your word today. Help us to find a truth that we can apply to our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, well, we again are in, virtuous has misspelled there. I did that on purpose, see if you were paying attention. And I realized this morning when I came in that the background that I selected is actually a Christmas background, but that's okay. I like Christmas, and we all need a little bit of cheer about this time as we're been dealing with a pandemic and quarantining for 2 months. And so we need a little bit of that, don't we? And so we're going to be talking about a godly woman, a virtuous blessing. And we often apply this to mothers, and I think it does apply to mothers, as we're going to see this morning, but I think it applies to all of us. The Proverbs oftentimes make this personification of wisdom the picture of women. All right, and so we're going to pick up here and with the first point of the lesson, and that's the blessed mother provides godly counsel. We're going to look at Proverbs 31, 1 through 3 and 8 through 9. And so it says, the words of King Lemuel, the utterance which his mother taught him. What, my son, and what son of my womb? And what, son of my vows? Do not give your strength to women, nor your ways to that which destroys kings. Open your mouth for the speechless, in the cause of all who are appointed to die. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. So here, we find a lot of wisdom here in just these few verses that we read this morning. This mother is addressing her son and says, listen, do not forget the blessing of the responsibility that God has given you with the influence that you have. And all of us have some amount of influence, don't we? And God expects us to use that influence for His glory and to help lead people to Him and to be God's representatives here on earth. One of the most important things that we can learn in life is it is important to receive godly counsel. So we need to find, thankfully, God has given mothers some patience and get insight and things that, as growing up, we didn't always appreciate. But when we grow up, we get into adulthood, and we experience more of life, we realize, hey, listen, maybe I should have listened to Mom more often. So hopefully we can learn that lesson before it's too late. So godly counsel is this, that we need to remember the influence that we have and not lose that influence. It takes a long time to build influence, to build a testimony. It only takes one bad, stupid decision to destroy it. And so wisdom says, listen, be careful how you live your life. Live a life of integrity, but also look out for other people. Speak up. Some would call this social justice. I just would call it godly living, that God expects His people to stand up for those who might be taken advantage of by society, to care for His people. God created all of us, didn't He? We're all human beings are created in the image of God. And God expects us that have a voice and have influence to use that influence, especially for the benefit of those who maybe the world is taking advantage of. And so we're to speak up for those. The Bible speaks in the Old and New Testament about some groups, especially widows and orphans, especially that the church is called to reach out to and to minister to and make sure they're taken care of. You remember in the Old Testament, their custom as they planted their fields, as they harvested, they were to leave the outer, rim for needy folks and for travelers, that they would have something to eat, that they could come by and get it. And so we see these kind of principles that God has put all through His teaching in life. In not only the Old Testament, but the New Testament as well, in so many areas that this impacts us and applies to our lives even today. And the book of Proverbs is a great reminder that God's truth is relevant in all times. These words, this wisdom, is eons and eons and eons old, and yet still applicable to us today on May 10th, 2020, as it was when they were written and first collected. So the second thing that we find is that the blessed mother does good to her community. And we're going to look at Proverbs 31, verses 20 and 25 through 27. She extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. And so here in this last part reminds us that, listen, a godly mother and godly wisdom leads us to look out for others, to help and to minister to others. And so this one that's wise, she extends her hand to the poor. In other words, she shares what she has with others. How many of us, I would count myself, had mothers that sacrificed a great deal for their children, but not just for their children, for others in general. I'm thankful that a general principle is that women, generally speaking, are giving and kind and nurturers. Again, of course, that's not always the case, but generally it is the case, and that's how God created them, and the world certainly does need that. So he says, you know what? Her strength and honor are her clothes. In other words, she is wrapped up in strength and honor. And, it takes a lot of strength, a lot of gumption to be a mother, doesn't it? Raising children is not an easy task. It never has been. I think it's probably more difficult today, perhaps, than it has in other parts of, or other times in our world. So it takes a strong person to be a mother, and her strength is not her muscles, but her wisdom, her loving, and her caring, her concern for her children, and her concern for others. And so this last verse, she does not eat the bread of idleness. In other words, she's not just a person that wastes time and lets life pass her by, but she's making a difference. And again, that's God puts all of us, not just moms, but all of us. God puts us in this world to make a difference. And then lastly, we find that the blessed mother seeks the glory of Christ. And so we're going to look at the last two verses of this proverb this morning. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is passing. But a woman who fears the Lord shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. And so the Proverbs concludes by reminding us that, charm is deceitful. Beauty is passing. Outward beauty. But a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. A woman who honors God and tries to point others to God and tries to make a difference on behalf of God will not only be praised here in this world, but especially praised in the next, and that's much more important, by the way. So she enjoys the fruit of her hands. In other words, she receives reward for her labors, for the work that she does. Sometimes it's not money, by the way. Sometimes it's not the shiniest of gifts, but oftentimes the most memorable and most precious things are time that her children spend with her, or the things they make for her. And so, she goes on, especially as a mom, gets older, more seasoned. She finds that she's even more blessed, and that blessing just keeps going and going and going. If she's left a godly legacy, and so her works will praise her. What she talked about that we're saved by work? No, but that the difference that wisdom makes in a person's life reaps benefits. When we apply God's principles to our lives are always better for it. Doesn't mean that we always get everything we want, or that life is easy, and we still have some trials, and we have temptations, and so on and so forth. But that wisdom leads to godly life, and godly life leads to more godly life and more of God's blessings. And so this proverb reminds us of how important it is to instill godly wisdom in our life and live it out. In other words, the book of Proverbs, these 31 chapters, we can have them memorized. We can read them constantly. But if we don't apply them to our lives, if we just leave them up here and they never get down here, we've wasted our time. And we have not received the wisdom that God intends for us to have. And so, a very important lesson. What are some other lessons that your mother has taught you? Again, let us know down in the box. Remember that this short lesson today, I hope, has been a challenge to us, that we will take God's wisdom, we will take the godly example of some godly women that God has allowed to come into our lives, and that we would see that it's always best to instill God's wisdom in our life and live out God's wisdom, and we'll find the rewards are out of this world. Remember, come join us, 11 o'clock, just a little bit, we'll have our worship service. And remember, next week, May 17th, we're back in person. We'll remind you, if you're sick or you've been sick, real recently, you got a fever, cough, etc., stay home. Continue to watch us on Facebook. We'll continue to be live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. But if you're healthy and you're well and you're able, come join us next Sunday morning. You'll be glad that you did. God bless you. I'll see you again just a little bit for worship. Bye-bye.